Hello everybody and welcome to another tutorial in camera and lens repair. And this time I will try to show you how you can fix the very stiff focus ring in a Leica Summicron-R. And this Aperture 2 and 50mm. Well, it doesn't really look like the Leica R you see on the pictures, but it's because it's missing the front ring and the name ring actually, and the lens hood of course, but it's still a Summicron R. But it has a problem. It has a very tight focus, in my opinion, and yeah, it's not really good. So I will try to show you how it's possible to actually get into it, and when you take the whole focusing system apart. There are some different things to do with that, but we need some tools at least. And even if it's made in Canada, like you said here on the back, it needs, it just works best with a JIS screwdriver like this one. Simply because the screwdriver fits a lot better than just a normal flip screw. We will also need a 1.8mm flathead screwdriver. It can be very useful, and we will use some. We will make some. We need some things to scribe. Make some scribes on the, not on the helicoid, but on the side of it. Inside, so when we take it apart, we have to measure how long is the distance between the different helicoids and how many turns you have to do this. And this is a dentist tool, which is a very, very pointed tip. Or this tool here is called a Flex Eye file, which is a really good tool. I will put links in the description. A compass or lens tool or whatever you have. I just filed and grind those, the tips. Or you could use a Vernier, which is really good for that. It's also not a very expensive one, but it's good for disassembly tools. And we will also use some, I will show you, those rubber tools, which can be really, really handy to disassemble a lens. So let's see it. I also make some notes, which we'll go through when we take it apart. It is an interesting lens to work with, different from others. A digital caliber is also a very good thing. And I will try to re-grease with the LM47 with the MOS2, which I also have used in other lenses with good success. And I just need a fine makeup brush for that. A tweezer can also be very handy. Now let's get into it. To disassemble it, we will start with the front plastic. It's actually made of plastic here, and for that we will use a rubber tool. You see, it has a not flush, not a shiny surface, so it should be very useful for use with a lens tool, rubber tool. Or we can use some different stuff, which you can actually sell. You can buy them in the hardware store, and it's a really good rubber. Or you could buy the rubber cones from Japan Hobby Tool. Is really a good tool. It's also good and very useful in different size. If you don't have those, well, you could just use a simple, this is a 46mm gasket, and simply put it on. And since the rubber is really sticky, we can try to unscrew it. And if it sits too tight, well, we have to use a lens tool kind of to just loosen it. Have a good grip on it and just slightly loosen it. And then you can continue by using the rubber tool whatsoever type it is. It doesn't really matter. We can just use this one. Doesn't really matter. And simply get it off. Just plastic. And that was it. We will see if this one, because we have to use a rubber tool again. And for that, well, in that case, it's the Japan hobby tool that is really the best. Now, that was part of it. One thing that is really important before taking it apart, because when we unscrew the retaining ring here, the very retaining ring here, the front of it, you will have the whole lens assembly with the aperture system just popping out. So, and it is important when the aperture is setting to something like 16, it should be 16. So before taking it out, we need to simply set a mark here on the back. You see the red dot? I mean, in this case it is missing, but the red dot is here. It's the same. So I simply set a mark here on the back of the mount, but I also set a mark here on the inner black ring, and I also set one mark on the back of the lens assembly, just so I know, is it turn it a little, or is it sitting correct? That's a very good thing to know before we're taking it apart. And we will also, when we are here, take out the thin, I think it's called the shade or whatever. It's a, well, protects the light from coming from everywhere. And for that we use a, in this case, we use a flathead screwdriver to take that out. The screws are magnetic, so that's good. I mean, not the screws, but the screwdriver is magnetic. So out with that, and the last one. And it's much easier when you set the lens to near end, because then it's easier for the pin here, for the aperture connection pin, to simply lift out the ring. I mean, you cannot, as I will show you, you cannot really take out the ring easy with the lens set to infinity. So we can just set it to here, and you can see it's not really that easy. You can in a way, but it's just much easier to set it at infinity. Oh, sorry, near end, of course. You know what I mean. Hopefully. Set it to near end, and then it's easy to take out. And since this has a mark, it can actually only sit in one position. But of course, you see the different thickness of the two sides here. Well, we could actually try to put it in. I don't think it's possible, really, because things will be wrong. No, it's not possible. Just that, to make that clear. Now, then we can actually take the whole lens assembly out by fully unscrew the retaining ring here with the 2 notches. Yeah. Set the lens aperture to 16 here, all the way over to 16. You can see the aperture is actually going a bit over 16 and it goes below 2, but that's the because the this cover ring is missing, so no problem with that. Just set it to 16 and you're fine. So I will unscrew this retaining ring, and it can sit pretty tight. If it sits tight, we can use some isopropyl alcohol, or we could use some acetone. It depends. But if there is something on thread locker in here, we could simply add a lot of it and let it suck in, just in case it is really tight. So then I think it will be all fine. If it sits too tight, well, you can just wait a little and then add more isopropyl alcohol. Now, out with the retaining ring here, and just have a good grip on it here, and we can just try to use a caliper, just a cheap one. If you don't have anything else, I think it will work fine. This one does have the little lock screw, but instead it has a lock in a different way. But we can unscrew it. So gently, and then we'll continue with the rubber tool here, and it's number 4 of the cones, and I can simply unscrew it. So, and then it's out. So it's free, nothing special. You see, the lens assembly will pop out if I just turn the lens over. So have a good grip here. You can see on the back here the lens assembly. If we set it to infinity there, it can turn a little in case you put it back in incorrect. So we can just let it pop into my hand. 16, so it is, and then it's out. So it is. This is the Aperture connection. And this is the fork that this pin goes into. So when you assemble it, you see it goes into here. Now, next thing is, because then we are actually working on the full aperture system, but I need to take off the mount. And the mount has a little spring, and this is actually here. Actually there, not there, but here, somewhere. There is a little spring and a steel ball for the aperture click. So be aware of that when you take it apart. And and set the mark up here, and you can also set a mark down here where the steel ball is. And for that we need to unscrew it with the JIS. Hold on a second, we will just wait with that screw, because when I unscrew all the other screws and just take out the mount, well, I do not have so much control of when I just loosen all the, unscrew all the screws, then the steel ball or the spring can fall out. And well, you know, it can be difficult to find if they fall on the floor. So I will just wait with the one screw that is closest to the aperture click. This one. So it is. Now put it on the disc, and we can just have a good grip on the mount, and then screw it out. And then lift it gently up. You will see that it is here behind it. Well, I was on the wrong side, so it was not on that side, it was on the other side. But so it is in here. And I think it's not really possible to put it in a different way, because you can see it in the aperture connection pin here will interfere with this side over here, so it cannot really be put in a wrong way. Now next thing is yeah, hold on, the little steel ball here is tiny, so keep it in a good place, and the tiny spring too. Well, you could say, well, I can just let it sit in there. Yeah, but it will fall out at some point and you will never find it again. Maybe. So you see the now it's actually clickless, so I can just take off the aperture ring, and it doesn't really matter which direction it sits. It can sit in both directions, doesn't really matter. So make sure when you put it in that it actually sits correct. Where did it go? There. So off with that, and the two screws that actually hold this part in here in place, sitting here on the side, and make sure how it sits. I set a mark here before I take it out, just as a very lightly mark here, so I know where it should sit, just in case you get confused of how it should sit correct. There's no repair manual on this lens. Well, I haven't found it yet, so it's good you at least take some photos or make a video out of it before you take it apart. So off with that, nothing special about that. Now then we have the bare focusing assembly, and now comes all the measurement which I have made my notes of, and which I think is quite important to when working with with lenses. You see, the at infinity, from the front of the inner helicoid, it will say this helicoid here, to the very back here. And there should be something like, as I wrote down, there should be something like 34.77, which you can see here at infinity. And then the same thing at infinity, from the front of the middle helicoid to the very back is 26.15. But we need to come into that middle helicoid, which is in here, and for that we need to take off the focusing ring itself. And before doing so, we will make some marks here, just so we have a reference. In here you can see the little screw in here. There are 4 of those, and just so I'm sure where the correct setting is, I will simply set a mark down here before I take out that spacer that hold the aperture, the focusing ring in place. And I will also make a scratch on the side of the focusing ring, and you can also do it up here, just so you know where it should sit. And it is also a good thing to set a mark here. I will tell you later why it is, and I will make more scratching here. So when the setting is correct, I know exactly where the focusing ring has to sit, and the focusing ring itself has a stop that is at infinity. So I'll take out the 4 screws. So there. And when you tighten those screws, it doesn't have to be much. Just a little will make it. And don't turn anything at the moment. It will say you just leave out the focusing ring just straight out. The inner ring that hold the focusing ring to the inner the middle helicoid, actually, so we know where it should sit. You just put it away. Now the more interesting things come here. Infinity is our reference, and it's a good thing to set a mark here, up here, in line with the infinity mark. Make a scratch, and also, which is very important, make a scratch here on the inner helicoid. It's also a good thing to make a mark here at this point here, so it's in line with the pin, which is in line with the infinity mark. And now we'll measure even more things at infinity from the front of the middle helicoid. The middle helicoid is that here. It will say from here to the very back here. There should be something like 26.15 or so. And it looks like it is actually that, no matter what. And we'll also measure a thing from the front of the depth of field ring to the very back. And it will say it should be something like 20. Oh gosh, I have to measure there. It should be something like if I can get it right, it should be something like 16.50 as is said here. Yeah, that should be that. I will tell you more about it. There should be also 26. Well, that I can only do when I take it apart. So the next thing is, before we unscrew anything, I also have to make some scratch in here. You have the infinity, and if we look on the back here, there are 4 screws, one here, there, there, and there. And to actually have the correct position of this, you see there are 2 guide pins here, one there and another one here, and it has to sit correct. So now I measure what length is from the back to the front, from the middle to the back, and so on. But it has to sit correct, just so you know what position it should sit. So I simply make a scratch in here, the infinity mark, and I simply make a scratch on both of the guide pin ring, let's say it called that, and on the depth of field ring actually. And so you know the position of, oh come on, out of focus, there. And also in here, set a mark at, since the lens is set at infinity, it's a good thing to set one mark here, both on this guide pin and on the yeah, it must be the middle helicoid inside. So those are in line. There's no need for setting anything over here because you only need one mark. So that's it. So now I can unscrew the 4 screws and turn the back here, which I will disassemble first. It doesn't really matter, but I think it's better to take off the aperture, I mean the depth of field ring, which is also part of the focusing system, and we can just see here what's going on. See, and I have my mark here at infinity, so I know the exact position of where it should sit. So I will unscrew those 4 screws, and there are only 4 holes here. You see there are other holes here and here and here, but well, you can see where they have put on some thread lock on the screws here and here and here, so there shouldn't be any problem with that way. So now it begins. You see this ring in here, it falls down and it's actually loose at the moment, and it's actually the two guide pins are connected via the ring. So now I can unscrew the back here and remember how to count how many turns. It will turn 7.5 turn until off, and it begins with the infinity mark here, and it will come off around over here. It will say around 7 o'clock or so, in reference to the infinity mark. So I will begin with the mark here, simply counter clockwise. It will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Begins to be a little loose, and then I will go down to around 7 o'clock or so, down here, where it will come loose, and I turn it, continue. Oh, there it is. Oh gosh, see, that's the problem. The ring in here will be loose. Oh, where is my mark? Should be somewhere. So it sees here. Now, I was actually wrong. It was coming over here. I was wrong about that. So now it's off, and we can just get rid of that. It will say around 5 o'clock in reference to my infinity mark up here. So now it's off, and I can just take it out and see how it looks. A lot of dirt and small stones, and well, not really good. So now I can take out the ring here, and we know its position because well, we have the infinity mark up here. See, there's also a lot of dirt and gunk. And now the middle helicoid, which is the one in here, and the inner helicoid, and it will come off. We just have to measure something from the front of it to the back of the middle helicoid. See, from the front here to the very back here of the middle helicoid, there should be something like 26.86. And since I set a mark here, my infinity mark is here, and I set a scratch here and a here, and it should go turning it clockwise to turn it off, and after 1 1/4 turn it should come off. It will be around here. It will say around 3 o'clock in my reference to the infinity here, so it will come off around here. So my mark, and we turn it 1, and then I will continue to my mark here where it comes off. I will say here. You see, this is a multiple threads, so you can actually put it where you want it, but you know to have know your distance. That's the important thing in this case. So now it's actually taken apart, and I will clean it with Odorless Petroleum, which I think is very good. So see you soon. And then I will continue after the good cleaning with the Odorless Petroleum, which actually works really good. Yeah, I found out one thing. The notes here. I said it's from the front of the depth of field ring to the very back is 16.50, but it doesn't really matter because it's only the depth of field ring that is actually yeah, around 16.50 from the front of it to the back. Yeah, but it has no, I mean, you can forget it. What's important is the 7.5 turn before the middle helicoid comes off the back here. So now I can, now I will show you how you actually re-lube it with the LM47 Liqui Moly, which is actually a good, a very stable helicoid grease. I have it sitting in my window for almost 2 years, and it's still the same, what you say, viscosity, I think it's called. So I will begin with the back. Maybe I think I will begin with the middle helicoid and the inner helicoid. Yeah, I think it's best. So we just need to have some grease on it, and we can just go on here. It doesn't have to be much, but we'll see how it will go. Maybe it's too thick. I don't know yet. Or maybe I should choose another grease, but we'll see. Yeah, a little too much. So let's see how it will go with the inner and middle helicoid. I have my off mark here, which I set where it came off. My infinity mark is here, as I said in the beginning, and I will end it up to here, my reference mark, and it will say it's a 1 1/4 turn that I have to turn, so I have to click it into the helicoid thread there, and go it. Wow, feels really good. Now that's something that is working. It doesn't work in any lens, but in this case, because the helicoid is actually a bit loose in the thread. So now, wow, it worked really good. I think it will be a success in this case. We can just wipe away much of it. Doesn't have to be too much on the back here. I mean, too much grease in will make it so it collects a lot of dirt and dust and so on. So there. So we can just wipe a little away of it, and that's fine. So now I'll put it back together as it should be. Click into place. Yeah, so there, and we'll go all the way up to the infinity, which is here, and there should be something like 26.86 or so. Which is actually pretty good. That was part of it. So now I'll add grease to the middle outer helicoid. I was thinking of using the grade 10 from Japan Hobby Tool, but I think it's too soft. Well, it depends. Somebody want a lens focus movement a bit tight, and others don't. So I think it will be fine. There doesn't have to be too much, way too much. So let's see how good it will be. I have my reference mark. I set the wrong here at 7 o'clock. It should be around 5 o'clock in reference to the infinity mark up here. So the other is, well, it's maybe a little more 4 or so. And it has to go 7.5, something like that, 7.5 turn. And my mark here is the infinity, of course, index mark. And I will put it on here and see, click, it says go all the way up to my infinity mark here and go 7 turns. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And you can go a little further just to move the grease into the thread. You can see it can go a lot more. And yeah, I'll just unscrew it and get the way too much of it, if there is any. I know exactly how the marks will come off. So there's no problem in that way. So it doesn't seem there is too much. Maybe I could add a little more. I think so. Just a little more. It's a bit too loose, I think. But maybe you think it's okay, it's too much. Maybe I was thinking of maybe the grade 30, also from Japan Hobby Tool, could be a solution. But I think I will stick with the LM47. Also because this grease does not separate the oil from the grease base. So here we again go all the way up to my infinity mark here and set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a bit over, and it feels really good. Also the inner helicoid feels, yeah, maybe on the little stiff side, but let's see how it will go. And you can see I'm missing one thing, bloody ring. So I need to unscrew it again. Well, no problem. Blah. Well, no one is perfect. And since I also set a mark here in the beginning, I will say this mark here goes into the actual groove here. Well, difficult with only 2 hands. See this in here? It will be where this mark is. That is also the infinity mark. Now I will just put this ring on, give it some very light grease. So that's it. And I have my infinity mark here, so this ring should go on to here, so it will sit correct. As you can see, just pop it on. Here we are. My infinity mark is here. The mark is sitting correct. So I can simply just add the back here, my off point here, and so it's there. Oh. So it will click into the thread there, a little under a half a turn, my infinity mark, and then 7 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and a bit over, so you can just move the grease into the thread, which will be fine. So that's it. Now you see the mark I set here is actually the correct one, so you can see where the screw holes is. so everything is lined up correct. So I only need to put in the 4 screws, and the rest is just assemble things. I maybe can move it upside down and possibly get the screws into the holes, which can be a little tricky. Yeah, that's actually working, and the rest is just a sample. So when you screw those screws in, do it over cross. And don't tighten them yet, just have a little loose. So when we, oh gosh, there. So when you set it to infinity and screw the screws very lightly, so it still can, you can make some just small adjustment in that way. So let's see how it will be. Wow, it feels good. It's really good, this grease. There it should be, and set it to infinity there, as it should be, the mark here, and I can just tighten the screws there, and we just check again. This is really good. Wow. This one and this one. Now then we are ready to assemble the rest of it, and we can just check, is everything as it should be? Yeah, better do that. From the, at infinity here, how long should it be from the back to the very front of the inner helicoid? Well, it's something like that. Well, and at infinity from the front of the middle helicoid to the very back is something like, there should be something like 26.15, which is actually the case here. Whoa. And yeah, I already measured the inner helicoid to the middle helicoid, so everything is actually back to normal. Oh, and I will just give the inner aperture ring, don't know the name of it, give it some very light grease here, so it will be good. And since I have set a mark in the beginning where it should sit, see this mark here, this scratch, it will end it up here with this scratch. So I can just put it on and give it some good movement. That's fine. Set it to correct, and put in those 2 small pins. There where it should sit, and so if you have another reference in grease or so, well, it's a kind of a of a feeling how you should the focus be very lightly or should it be really hard to turn. It depends. So take care of when tighten those screws so you will not break one of the side of the head, or when you have a problem getting them out again. So there it is. That's all fine. And now we can put in the focusing ring itself and the spacer here, which also have, see the mark here, which I said in the beginning. Hopefully you can see it. It is there. And it goes on to the infinity, which is here. It's also the mark I set in here, so you will know the correct position. The two marks here should be in line with each other, which this is for now. And the middle helicoid in here should also be in line with the index mark. So now I can simply put on the focusing ring itself. It has a stop here that goes against the little pin down here, where you can see it. And don't, when you put it on, don't turn the, when you press it on, it should just go on, and that's it. And then load a screwdriver with a screw. Then put in the spacer here. Whoop. So there it should be. And now it sits correct. So I can just add one of the screws, and it doesn't have to be tight when you screw them in. If you tighten them too much, you will have a tighter focus ring. You should just have it very lightly tighten. So there, and the last one. So think about what actually how you want the lens or the focusing system to be. Wow, feels really good. Then I can gently tighten it a bit more, not too much. I could have, if I think about it, I could have added some thread lock to the screws in here, but of course you can, or you could use nail polish varnish to actually put on the thread, so they will not really come loose when you use it. So, and that's it. Feels good. Now that's actually a very good grease for this lens. Wow. Just like new. But that's fine. So now I will I will add the aperture ring, and I could also give it a little grease, but since it is not really in touch with the inside here, well, one could use it, do it. We can just do it very, very lightly, and doesn't have to be much. So my numbers here, and where is the have the two notches here, and it goes over to two pins here. So, wow. Now this is really good. I think it works really good. Not too stiff. And then I can add the mount. We have my two marks here, the red dot, and the red dot is here. So now I can put in the tiny spring. So. And I will also give the steel ball just a tiny amount of grease. Doesn't really have to be much. I mean, I will add something at the end of the spring here, just a little light grease, so the steel ball has something to sit on. That's it. Then add the tiny steel ball, and there looks like there's some dirt on it. Yeah. Pop the lens on the spring. So. And if you really want the grease, I mean the click to be a little silent, you can just wipe away the old stuff here and simply add new grease to it. And well, I think it's not a problem here, but we can just do it anyway, just a little. Just have something in the middle, and then it will spread when you move the lens, when you move the aperture ring. So now everything is in place, and then I can load a screwdriver with a screw and put the mount on. So my mark is here, my red dot is here, it is up here. And it should be there. So everything is lined up. Aperture set to 16 or so. And I can add my mount. Take good care of when you add the mount that you just put it on and press it down, because in that way the aperture click steel ball will sit on the spring and not fool around. And let's see how good it will be. Whoa. Now that's good. Then we can just add the rest of the screws. So we are almost there. Now with a focusing system that is really working proper, just like it was new. I don't know which kind of grease actually Leica used back then, but when I opened up the lens, it looks like it was something with MOS2 grease, but I have no idea, of course. Wow, soft and nice. And now we can actually add the lens aperture assembly, set it to 16, and we have the little fork down here that will go onto the little pin here. And we of course also have the marks that we set in the beginning, which will make it a lot easier. So by adding a maybe I should take, no, this one is fine. Oh yeah, I think we'll do this, because when I put the lens assembly in, it's just so much easier when having a rubber cone to actually catch the little fork in here. So by putting it over, let's see, we'll go. And it should be something like that. And it sits where it should. Then I can flip it over and put on the ring, the front retaining ring here, and put a rubber cone. Not tighten the lens assembly yet. Just put it in so we know where it should sit. So it's still, you can see it's still loose. Maybe I can just use my lens compass tool anyway. And again, I could add some thread lock on here to the thread, but I didn't do it. So don't tighten it fully, just have it a little loose so you can still work with the back ring here when we put that in. And set the lens to near end up to here, because then it will be a lot easier to add the ring. And since I set a mark here in the beginning on the back here, which we see here, I can simply just turn the lens assembly so it will line up with the mark on the mount. Then I can add the ring here, and it's easy because the lens is set, the focus is set to near end. Then I can lower it here, and then it sits where it should. Don't tighten the screw, don't tighten the plate yet. So it's good the screws are a little magnetic. There. So you can see it's not that hard. The hardest part is actually measure the different helicoids to figure out what the distance is. So now we can see the mark is not lined up yet. So if I turn the back here, you can see the aperture is set to 16, and you can see I can still turn it. That is why it is so important to set marks, before you start. See, it should be there. It has nothing really to do. It's when I tighten the retaining ring on the front. So there, last screw. Now it's important to line up the lens assembly and the 3 marks I set. It will say there. Now turn it over and then tighten the retaining ring. So, and now we are back to normal again. So the aperture is actually working, and the focusing is actually really, in my case, is really buttery soft, not too loose and not too tight. When I can actually turn it. So that's actually from, yeah, that was it. Since I do not have the front, well, you must think of that. It looks like it has been the one of the older, because there is a little mark here, or I think it's something from a set screws. When you put the front on, it will say you take off the nameplate, and under that it sits a small screw, and then you can loosen or unscrew it, and in that case unscrew the front. I do not have it, so yeah, that was everything from me in this case. Hope you can use the info and hopefully re-grease your helicoids in this 50mm f.2. That's all. Bye bye.